It's sort of like riding in a Lincoln Continental with the top down. Very smooth ride, or riding a motorcycle in the sky. So you have the breeze blowing on you, and it's a very different experience. Actually, my first airplane ride was in a Stearman, and it was blue and yellow. It was an Army Air Corps Stearman, and the gentleman that was flying it had flown in World War II, learned to fly in a Stearman, flew B-29s during the war. Well, as a child, I drove up and down the road with my parents, and I was in the back seat of the car, and I would see the billboards on the road, and I kept pointing that out to my parents. Look, they have dog fights there. And it wasn't until I went out there with the Boy Scouts when I was 14, it was my first exposure to seeing the show. And I feel very lucky that I lived within 15 miles of a very unique place like the Flying Circus where I could actually go there. So when I was in college in ROTC, I set my sights on becoming a pilot, but then I found out that they required better eyesight than I had at that time. I spent 4 years on active duty in Strategic Air Command back in the 80s. You know, after not being able to fly in the Air Force, I did not let that discourage me, so I pursued getting my commercial license, a flight instructor rating, and began to pursue commercial aviation. And I got a loan, bought the airplane, and immediately started using it in air shows and flying passenger rides, for hire in the airplane.
Hey, how you doing, sir? Can I have a hug?
Because you're a big guy.
Yeah, that's what you tell me every time.
I used to be tall.
I've been Air Force all my life, so I'm a retired Air Force guy. And my dad didn't approve of flying, but he was infantry. I went to school at West Point. One of my classmates is the great Robin Olds. And Olds and I were in the same squadron, and both of us were made flight leaders. And most of the flying we did was escorting bombers all over Germany. And so I lost my right engine and put on fire. I felt the heat, could see the glare, so I thought I'd better get out of the airplane before it burns up. There was forest and brush up ahead, but I got it slid on the ground sooner than that, and it held together. They found me, and when they found me, they pointed their guns at me, and one of them said, "Was you the war ist over. Put up your hands."
I have another step over there now that I guess 7 or 8 years ago, I was speaking with Al Tucker's daughter, and she was working in our snack bar out at the Flying Circus, and she pointed at my Stearman and she said, "You know, my father flew and trained in one of those in World War II." And I said, "Oh, really? I'd like to talk to him." And she says, "Well, I'll bring him out." So a few weeks later, he came out and I met him.
So we shook hands, and Dave asked me if I had ever flown that airplane before, and I said, yeah, it's the first airplane I ever flew. "Would you like to fly it again?" I said, "I sure would." "Come on." He discovered I could fly it. Dave and I have been flying together ever since.
I've flown several World War II pilots in the aircraft that had learned to fly in it, and that's always a joy for those of us that are maintaining these airplanes. And I really see it as, I'm just a caretaker of it, and I'll pass it on to some other pilot, and he can continue to maintain it and share it with everyone. Flying was his life in the military. He's told me stories about all the different aircraft he's flown, and and there's never any regrets. But I don't think as a pilot we really ever retire from the feeling and the love that we have for aviation. It's just it's in his blood, I think, just like all of us.